Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm Phil Rice, and on today's Wizard Hangout, I am very lucky, honored, and privileged to have the wonderful Mr. Philip Harris Smith joining us for a informal conversational hangout on a whole bunch of really interesting topics that we're both interested in, and I'm sure that many of you will find this conversation to be just a bit of fun and informative. And so please, just remember, if you have any comments or questions, please put them into the live chat. I'll send some prompts throughout the show. And I'll just turn that off. So yeah, without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Philip Harris Smith.
Hello.
Oh, hello, brother. How are you doing?
I've had a good day. Thank you so much for bringing me on today. I really appreciate that.
Man, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. And it's always a pleasure to hang out and chat. A man of your knowledge and experience and these types of things without buttering you up too much. But there's so much we can talk about. First of all, I just want to say, how you doing? What's happening? What's going on?
Well, today I've been finishing off this course on the vegetable menstruum. I've just got to add some pictures to some of the documentation. So that should be up within a couple of weeks. And because it's such a long time since I visited the Enochian Aethers, I'm going back through them. I'm still just doing the early ones. I first visited those Aethers in the early to mid 1990s. So I did find some journals, but I thought that it would be a good idea to just revisit them, seeing as I'm going to be offering people guidance on how to navigate them. I thought it might be a good idea to have a more recent recollection of what they're like. So that's been the work of the last week or so, anyway. Yeah. So it's been well in the summertime here in the UK. I'm always doing loads, unless it's really, really hot, and then I just sit doing nothing. But this July has been very mild, so
yeah, it's pretty chilly down here.
I imagine.
We've just hit I mean, I live in a metropolitan type urban area, and we're about 4 degrees. On the strip of land that we're on, Auckland is built on a funny shaped strip of land. We've got water on both sides. And so we get all sorts of interesting weather patterns here. But at this time of the year, it's getting pretty cold. And it gets colder in other parts of the country. But, you get used to what you're used to. And I've got to say, doing, going out into the evening and sitting outside, or sitting out in the morning and doing my morning sit, it's getting pretty frosty on the nose. I don't notice it, and the frost and the mist, it's absolutely lovely though. This is the thing is that we have to adapt to our changing seasons. We are at the mercy of the planet somewhat. So, and the seasons. So, but as far as going back through going back through notes and things like that for coursework, I find that this kind of cooler weather, or just this time of year in general, for me is really good for reviewing things. I mean,
definitely, yeah.
We spend a lot of time
in the winter, up here it's the same, yeah.
So it's just funny, even though we might be on different parts of the world and essentially different seasons, there are some activities that seem to be quite popular. And I think for where I am down here, it's definitely reflective time, because we spend so much more time inside. And so, it's funny, you might be active in the summer season in some ways. And so that benefits the people who are in the hibernation season, because they're all maybe more in study mode. This one thing that I really wanted to touch on, because we brought this up in the Bardon, brother, is that, as I meet more people who have Bardon as a sort of underlying framework that they launch a lot of their other works from, or they use it to help them understand or make more sense, or they just run it alongside, is these other modalities or approaches or systems, and how complementary this Bardon framework is to these other systems. I find this with my own practice being a Reiki teacher. So I thought, well, this would be a great way to sort of start things off because, obviously Bardon is something, how we met through, and it's an important central piece. And, I'd love to hear, more, and I'll just hand it over to you, a bit of a discourse from you on how, your story with Bardon and how it led you to find value in things like, say, Enochian, if you wouldn't mind.
For me, it was my dog's just moved, so I can put my arm out now. For me, it was I in the early 1980s, I gave Bardon a go, but I lacked the caliber. It's the cold showers. I just couldn't do the cold showers. So it was just, and I got into more the Golden Dawn stuff, then the Thelema stuff. And it wasn't until I'd got married and me and my wife Jan, we had to work. So then we had a 3-month honeymoon when our contracts finished. So we went to Egypt and rented a house in Giza, which is part of Cairo now. There's no break between them. And we did the sort of classic entry level Enochian grimoire, because Jan hadn't done any Enochian, called Heptarchia Mystica, where you draw the angels appear in a shoe stone. And when we did that, it became very clear to me that I needed to basically do Bardon stuff. So I started from the beginning. Excuse me. After I'd done that sequence of work, I just got straight into Initiation in Hermetics. I had a PDF of it anyway. And I still had the books back in the UK. So I just started. That was in that would have been 2007, because we got married in 2006, but we couldn't have our honeymoon until 2007. So that's when I returned to Bardon, having had a fairly pathetic attempt at it some decades earlier. And I realised, as I progressed through the exercises, that I had been very foolish not to persist with it. It truly is a universal key. It really does. It really does plug into pretty much everything else I've done in the past or have encountered since. And also, I would say that progress with it is more, I don't think you'd call it efficient, more parsimonious. You can get a lot further with your effort if you focus on Bardon. So in my view, although I've done a lot of other things, I always say, wishing I had done it myself, I always say, do the Bardon as the primary thing, and everything else is secondary to it. That's based. I know I'm basically saying, do as I suggest, not as I have done. But based on what I've done, it seems to me that is the best approach. Is for Bardon's training to be the primary center of gravity, and for anything else that you start to do to be an addition, an add-on to that. That's definitely that, and I do. I'm sure that I've probably wasted at least a decade of my work by not doing it that way.
I can totally relate.
And therefore, I would suggest that to other people.
I just feel this great relief and sense of peacefulness when we start talking about the value of this particular body of work and how it is so helpful for grounding other systems that have become maybe diluted or scattered, or they've become like a mental sort of just a plaything as opposed to an actualizable sort of like, bringing things in. Because, as you start finding these practices that are, that have some kind of tangible output that's satisfying, these things that are still sort of just like I said, flowery things that are talked about, it's, all I want to do is like go in and go, well, hang on, how does this overlay over the thing? I want something that I can ground it in because this is how I operate now. I can't help but be a hermeticist, even
Yeah.
though, because it's got to make sense. I come from a construction and forestry and music background where, you know, it's mechanical and then, and these types of things. And so for me, this has been such a great treasure to come across. And it makes conversations with people so much easier because I can now bring it back down to earth, so I can talk to people on the street. I just adjust my language and my lexicon slightly, but it's just given me this huge width and depth and range of flexibility with communication and articulation, and also highly tangible and satisfying outcomes,
Yeah.
and that's really where it's at. Because I mean, if you're not being satisfied in some sense, I mean, I know a lot of people have just lost interest because they did a thing for a bunch and then it went nowhere. And I mean, for some, I know Bardon can be like that because it is a challenge, it is a task, it's an enjoyable process, I think. But yeah, go for it.
Well, I was thinking most people seem to get stuck on vacancy of mind which is in step 1, because they think it's something more than it is, and they think it's some kind of incredible heightened state, when in actual fact it's a much simpler thing. So they try to do sort of a step 5 or step 6 exercise in place of the step 1 exercise, and that seems to be a very common pitfall that people fall into, of overestimating what the task that they're being asked of is. With me, it was just I'm a sort of shiftless hedonist sometimes and cold. I mean, when I got back to Bardon, I freely admit I still didn't do the cold showers. I just never, I've never done that. It's just, I'm just too soft for things like that. I always have been,
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much everything else I did do. But people overestimate the nature of the task. In fact, interesting. That's the pitfall that very interesting and nice fellow. I haven't met him, but he seems very nice. Foolish Fish. He did a review recently of Initiation
Yes.
into Hermetics, where he said that you've got the first step is you being perfect, and I understand why he makes that error. People overestimate what's being asked of you in the first exercise, the first step. It's actually not far from needing to be perfect. It's just basics, and you can see them in other paths. Like, for example, do you mind if I just give a brief outline? The vacancy of mind is in basic meditation practice. That's wrapped into the breathing work. Where that really basic Theravada Buddhist thing where you breathe in and then you breathe out and you watch your thoughts. You don't interact with them, you watch them. Well, that's part of the magic mental training of step 1. And then eventually the mind stills. Well, there you are. You've just achieved magic mental training of step 1, vacancy of mind, but you've done it with a breathe. There's the Theravada Buddhist technique is arguably more difficult because you've got to do breathing as well.
Yeah.
So they overemphasize what is being asked of them. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You can, when you see it in other meditative techniques, it's fairly straightforward. It's fairly. I mean, I did the Theravada breathing exercise in about 2 weeks. I got it to the point where no more thoughts were coming, which is vacancy of mind. And this is why I didn't struggle with that, and yet people apparently they struggle with it for years, and I think it's because they think it's something like not being aware of any of the senses, which is much more advanced stuff. That's at least step 5, step 6 in Bardon's training. And it's in for example yoga, that's way past visualization techniques and things, because that's when you visualize something, you're aware of the senses. So then once you've mastered that, you then move on to not being aware of any sensory input at all. That's another step further on again. So they get the taxonomy wrong because Bardon's so concise, and they read elsewhere. And the reason I say they is because I've spoken to people who've made this error, they read elsewhere and they draw false conclusions about what Bardon is asking to be done.
Yeah.
And that's again, I understand totally. Foolish Fish made that same assumption, but he comes from a different path, so he can only he's just looking at what he's reading. He hasn't directly worked with it, so it's a perfectly reasonable mistake. I have to say, a mistake to make, but it's not what Bardon's not asking you to be perfect. He's not asking you to jump to some incredible level straight away. It's, as I say, it's a much more prosaic practice, and you find it in other meditative techniques that people consider very basic. Sorry, I'm going on a bit there.
No, that's all. This is what we're doing, bro. Cheers. All right. Yeah. I think too that the true treasure of the Bardon canon can't really truly be appreciated at a glance. You have to immerse yourself in it, in the commentary, and the wide commentary that's available too, because there's a lot of teachers who are modern translators, and I mean that English translation of the German book. And I haven't read the German one. I don't speak German or read German, but my understanding is that it could be better translated in some ways as well to make it, because I'm a teacher. And all of those exercises in Bardon's book, from my point of view, they're all fingers pointing at the moon. What is the moon that they're pointing at? What's the outcome he's trying to generate as a result of the exercise? The exercise is the cause. What's the effect that he's pointing at? And, there's lots of different ways to get to vacancy of mind, for mindfulness, for single pointedness, and these types of things. But I also understand that, like the book's already like this. And if he did what modern creative teachers do, which is to take one exercise and then go wide and say, here's 20 different ways to do the same thing, the book would be, and so it's I think too that, this is a conversation that comes up a bit too, is like, I totally hear it. Like, he's got a format. Here it is. It's designed to produce outcomes. It's a single solo path, foolproof for anybody. And as we know, there are personal learning styles and learning styles that, I've taught it as a music teacher. We have kinesthetic learning, visual learning, you have oral, understanding it through hearing it, seeing it, playing with it, these types of things. So there's lots of different ways of learning, and some people more than others. And back, obviously, in Bardon's day, it was just like you were just grateful for a warm drink and probably, being able to have access to it. So you would just get the material and you would just knuckle down and adapt yourself to the teachings. And I think that's what can put a lot of people off. And like you said, the vacancy of mind. I was very blessed to come across another teacher who's not a Bardon guy, but he approaches many of those exercises from a completely different point of view. And I found this 10 years before I found Bardon. And his approach to vacancy of mind is a guided meditation from another practice. And, but being able to essentially push the thoughts out of the way, and then they just don't arise. And then there's those first three exercises, they complement each other nicely, and then they become, for me anyway, almost like the same thing. First of all, you're looking at the desktop without getting caught up with what's on the desktop. Then you're learning to focus on one particular item on the desktop and be able to push them aside or disregard them so you can totally focus. And then you can completely clear the desktop and become the master of your internal cognitive real estate. And but yeah, I think people can put too much pressure on that. I think there's a natural flowering too when you go through the process, and that's, I think, the that conversation that switches between the linear process of, say, what Bardon says, which is to be very strict on how you do things, attain proficiency before continuing, and then there's this holographic method, which is also quite pronounced and popular at the moment, which is where you practice them all and they all prop each other up. But I have to say,
I'm sort of rub my chin at this holographic stuff. I think you should. I'm going to be a little little polemical. I think I'd done loads of solid Hermetic stuff before I came back to Bardon, but I was right to start from step one and work my way through. And I think that I would have sold myself short if I hadn't done the training as Bardon gave it to me. If I'd started dipping into different places personally, I think I would have I would have made an error in doing that, and I know that people say that they find good results from that, and I respect it. But in my personal experience, that it would have not been a good approach.
So this is a really cool conversation to have, because people in the audience hearing from um, practices and teachers who are a few steps down the road and just saying, hey, look, I tried this and this didn't work, or I did this and man, that bang and perfect. For me, I am still exploring the teaching method because I am a teacher. I'm looking at teaching methodologies and looking at the students and going, okay, well, how do you keep people engaged? Because we want people to be successful as well. But it's like, I enjoy the feeling of achievement I experience from attaining proficiency by drilling down on something and getting good at it and exploring it and pulling it apart and getting to know it. I befriend the exercise. Hey, mate, how you doing? Let's hang out. There's no tension there. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to do this exercise and get it absolutely perfect. It's like, no, chill out a bit, chill out. Okay, there's a thing. I love coming up with visual metaphors. So, because people are very visual nowadays, because everyone's watching Instagram and YouTube and da. So to give people an internal sort of like thought process of an idea, that helps them with their visualization training. Just saying, all you creative teachers out there, there's lots of ways to approach this. But, going, oh, wow, I totally climbed the first peak or the foothill of the mountain by being able to just sit there and watch my thoughts without engaging them. It's very satisfying. And once I pulled back, those tendrils of activity of my mind that just wants to explore everything, once it starts receding back into its little house and just sitting in the chair and just watching what's going on, it's so relaxing and peaceful.
Bind yourself and you shall forever be free.
Perfect. Oh, let's write that one down.
That was Mr. Crowley, I'm afraid. It wasn't me. I'm not going to...
Bind yourself.
It probably wasn't him either. It's probably a religious... probably biblical.
Was it bind yourself and
bind
forever
yourself
be free?
and you shall forever be free.
Shall forever be free. Let's put that one up for the people. Okay. All right. Can you quickly explain what that bind word sort of includes, the details?
It means that basically you get a proper grip of your mind. Your mind thinks when you choose. It does not when you choose. You allow emotional activation, and you can now. I think perhaps some therapists would be very alarmed at what I say, and from a psychology background, I just smile at that. You can allow your emotions to flow, or you can stop them flowing because you recognize what's going on. They only flow unbidden if you're not accepting things. So you literally bind yourself. You can stop whatever you're doing at the flick of a switch if you need to. And this isn't unusual to Hermetics. The most common modern day expression of that is people experiencing military conflict, but it does occur in professions. The surgeon has to suddenly act rather than panic, or you've got to. Hermetic training is particularly Bardon's, is at a level of excellence that is analogous to the best surgeon not panicking and then able to, through focus, save a person's life when there's a calamity on the operating table, or the bravest soldier, or whatever it is, they basically get a grip, if you'll pardon the expression, and then and also, just as importantly, they do allow things to flow as well. They don't. It's not like you shut yourself off forever. In fact, in Enochian, there's actually an aether where if you do that, if you've learned to do that, and that's how you live your life, you can experience dreadful calamity and possibly never even come back from the aether. You end up being trapped in the aether because you lack
Mm.
compassion. You've managed to achieve this incredible binding, but there's no compassion in you. So that's all you are, and that means that you're
Mm.
just locked in the aether. And I've never heard of it actually happening, but it's theoretically possible that you don't come back, and
Yeah.
your physical body then fades into ending. So there are parallels in other magical and hermetic pursuits, but the crux is to I mean, in my 20s, I was quite interested in martial arts, but I sort of got into magic more as time went by. But this idea of the strong mental fist inside the inner, the inner, and there is that. Basically, you have to. I understand what you're saying, um, but again, I suspect that this is where, in the nicest possible terms, we might have a slight difference of view, and which is, I would hope we do. If we both felt the same thing, that wouldn't be very interesting. But I think that you just basically do it. You make a decision and then you do it. And yes, there are strategies for best usage of effort. And sometimes if you don't allow yourself to be flexible, you'll waste a lot of time. That's certainly something that I've done. But when it comes down to it, you've decided if you've decided that you want to pursue these things, hermetics, magic, meditation, then that's what you do. That's it. That's your thing. Other people have callings. I've met people who if they weren't a medic, they would have probably killed themselves because that's all they do. That's all they are. That's
Yeah.
they're gripped by it. Not all people, not all medics that I've met, or teachers as well, actually. I've worked as a teacher and I've met teachers like that. That's what they are. That's their essence. And I think that people talk a lot about egregores. There's an egregore to hermetics as well. And I would say that my experience of an egregore is that you are, this is you. This is what you do. You're a hermeticist. You're going to do this. You're going to keep doing it until it works. And if there's a problem, you're going to solve it. There's
Mm.
that relentless drive to progress with it. And when you make a mistake, you have that's the worst and best part is when you've made an error and you haven't progressed. It's profoundly crushing, but extremely important to accept that. Otherwise, you will not progress. You have to accept, yes, I did this wrong. I have been wasting my time. This was wrong. And then you have to work out what you did wrong. Ask other people for help if need be. Ask if you've got that far. Ask spiritual entities, angels, and such like for help. Ask divine providence for help, and then just get back onto it. Just get back to doing it. So that I understand this finding the best way to learn, what type of learner as a person, and looking at the best techniques, kind of this sort of life hack approach almost. I understand that, and I can see that there's benefit to it. I just personally don't like it very much. And I don't think I think you should just basically do it. That's what you should do. I'm sorry.
No, that's
Sorry.
okay.
Sorry,
That's
mate.
okay. No. I mean, I found Bardon through a teacher who's been practicing and teaching this for about 30 years, and he
I
uses
gotcha.
Qigong as his entry point. So you basically develop the clairsentient gates of feeling it, very tangible, very encouraging. And so, this is my choice of approach. And I think
Gotcha.
being able to politely, like you said, we have slightly different views on it, but this is kind of like part of the reason why we're having this chat is like, we have good reasons for why we approach it. Like
Mm,
we can basically say, well, the reason I do this is because of this. And I mean, for myself, when I've had, I've taught thousands, probably close to thousands of guitar students, and one teaching approach didn't work because I'm dealing with so many different personalities and learning styles. I'm sort of bound to help them progress. And if I find that just beating them over the head with one thing doesn't work, then I've got to be able to pivot a little bit and find them. Now, obviously, being a self-driven student, if you're determined, IIH is perfect. I think what it is that there's people toe dipping and finding that, like this actually requires some serious sit down, because it is, I think you have to translate it for yourself a little bit too. Whatever it is that you're doing, mapping it out and making sense of it. But I've also found that
he is concise. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, there's a lot packed into like that book, and that's a big book as it is. But I think when it comes down to taking on, and this is a sizable task in some ways, and if I was going to offer any advice, unsolicited, of course, it's just like, enjoy the process, because each one of these little treasures that you work on in your mental, astral, and physical bodies reaps some wonderful fruit, and I have to say that the progression that's offered allows a perception of the value of that fruit to sort of naturally unfold as well. Because if you're too far ahead and you can't concentrate and keep the blank space and just be able to watch things. These are key skills to have way early on. And I did a lot of this with other meditation practices. So, I think personally, there's foundational aspects, and I haven't read all of it, but Raider Soul has got a preparation for IIH book, which I do believe has got some work maybe to help build good foundations before you enter into the practice. I don't know. Have you?
No, I did raise, talking about something. I was doing Bardon's third book, Key to the True Kabala, and I had failed to achieve the seventh step, the single letter key. And it was thanks to Ray and the course he's running at Perseus that I redid that step with his lesson, with the lessons stuff he put on Perseus, and also a few brief chats with him on Messenger. And the second time I got through it, I got it sorted. So I based on that, I'd have to say his introductory course is going to be exemplary. Although I have progressed past that kind of work now. I would imagine it would be very useful, simply based on what I've experienced with the Kabbalah course.
So what it comes down to is like, we've got to decide for ourselves, how innovative we can be within the given framework before we start stepping outside of what because I think the book itself has its own egregore that you join in with, like if you really get into it, it's got a gestalt or a kind of a presence around it that you can tap into, especially if you're following the teacher's guidelines. And I think there is flexibility and room to move there. I also think that, you can, I have to say, like, there's a lot of time that can be wasted if you overthink it. And if you just don't do it, and because you figure it out a lot in process as well. I think this is it. You sit down with a thing and write, okay, step one, mental training. Okay, I've heard that people spend years on this and they get stuck or whatever it is. It's okay. Well, I don't want that, because he's giving me a metric, that a goalpost that I need to reach, and this is what it is, and this is how I do it. And personally, that exercise, that first one, that's a lifelong one for me anyway. I've got to go back, and I do that. I enjoy that one in the morning, but just discovering the value. And I just want to say too, that while we're talking about Key to the True Kabala, which is a wonderful, wonderful explorational sort of topic, is there anything you can offer from your years of experience with KTQ that you'd like to share with the audience, especially those that may be looking forward to it? They might be on initiation into Hermetics and they're doing the long stretch plan, and they're like, and it's good to have things to look forward to, but also things to be wary of in that as well, because,
there's a massive difference between Key to the True Kabbalah and yeah, there is. It's distinctive, certainly. You see, when you activate a formula, when you get to the point with that where you activate a formula, it does. I've mentioned this in one of those Bardons. There is an automatic effect that is not expected the first few times you do it. You're not expecting just to do the formula and for something to happen. You would have by then, because you've worked so hard to reach that point, you would have by then, through various paths, including Bardon's Hermetic works as the primary focus, you would have spent half an hour or an hour focusing on something, and you might have spent weeks incrementally building up to things, and you've done extensive work and extensive preparation on all manner of things, and you've reached a certain state of being or ecstasy, if you wish, and there you are. But with the key to the True Kabala, you do a formula and you're there. So it seems counterintuitive. It seems like you might be doing it wrong, because you can do a formula and achieve in 5 minutes what with other work it might have taken you half an hour or 3/4 of an hour to reach, by really working at it, keeping the mind focused, using all sorts of tricks to keep the mind on the task, and you finally get to this experience of and state you were seeking. But with the letters, it just kicks in. You actually have to calm down and stop doing it a bit, because it gets too much, and that's not always the case with other work. So it's very distinctive in that regard. This automatic activation. And of course, when you add all the other techniques you've developed to that automatic effect, it really, it's like some kind of exothermic explosion. It's ridiculous. So the thing that would be the thing that is distinctive with key to the True Kabala is this sudden onset compared to the incremental steady work that finally achieves an accomplishment with a lot of other Bardon material, and that's what makes it remarkable and different. That sudden. The only other thing that I've had anything analogous to is the Enochian language, which also has an automatic activation, although it can be very coarse if you don't get into the right state of mind with it, which is why I've been looking at and writing about how you can amalgamate both techniques together, because the incredible theurgy of key to True Kabala and the automatic effect that it produces, along with the automatic effect that anyone can get simply from speaking Enochian, when you put those two methodologies together, it becomes very remarkable indeed. So you can actually go further. Once you get this automatic activation with Bardon's key to True Kabala, you can then add it to the automatic evocatory nature of Enochian as a language, and employ them both together to as if blowing your socks off wasn't enough, you can blow your feet off as well. It's kind of thing. That's but yeah, the thing that's distinctive is this, as I say, this rapid upswing towards the more heightened energy levels that you can readily achieve with key to the True Kabala. And of course you can achieve them with practice of magical evocation and initiation into Hermetics, but it seems to me that you have to work somewhat harder with those. with Bardon's third volume, all of a sudden it's like you've opened the floodgates a lot of the time. It just you activate the letters and it just kicks off.
Yeah, I have to say, I've had, I've always been attracted to Kabbalah in its many forms, and this has been probably one of the profundity of this third book cannot be understated, and it is a different type of work than in the first book. But you can see, after reading through these three books over and over again and getting my head around them intellectually, and then going through and attaining a sort of an experiential understanding through the process of development, this is the thing, is I think this is a where the first and the third book are quite contrasted, in that the first book is about essentially developing sense perception or capability at one level, so that you can train these three bodies. Like you said, you bind yourself. Essentially, you're like, if you're letting yourself run amok, if your three bodies are running amok and they aren't tamed, if they're the lesser aspects are running the show, so to speak, and there's not the thing, these other things, you just won't get them. You need to be able to concentrate as a starting point, but also refining your own natural expression so that you choose when to operate. And so, just back to initiation into Hermetics, this kind of like ideal platform for operation on the physical plane can be constructed and built by training, schooling these well sort of cleanly defined aspects of yourself. And really, anyone listening to this who's on the initiation into Hermetics path, even not doing KTQ, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, right? Things become clearer, easier to understand. Your ability to extract data from your environment and what's going on in the situation, your ability to manage, categorize, organize that data so it's very functional and useful, the ability to sort of like discover new detail and value through familiar data. So basically, your sphere of awareness, the quantity increases. You can pick up more as your mental space expands, and then the resolution of the available data increases. So something that you only saw, oh yeah, this is a thing, now there's new value added to it. I find this stuff really interesting because it's not just for magicians, it's just for everyday life. I mean, you can take stuff out of initiation into Hermetics, essentially the best parts of it, and blend it into whatever you're doing, especially the early mental training. Sorry, I'm wandering off the topic here.
No,
but
you carry on, man.
No, this is great. I want to hear more from you, sir. Now, I've got to say, we've got a couple of questions in here. Oh, thank you. I just want to say thank you. I put a like, please like and subscribe, and a regular follower has done so. This is why we put these banners up at the bottom, guys, because we're trying to exalt the channel a little bit, and obviously the guests. So I'm just going to do a shout out and say, let's just do a quick plug for Philip's work. So you can find Philip's work on PerseusArcaneAcademy.com and FalconBooksPublishing.com. There are links in the description below, and I also have some pages towards the end of the chat. We'll do another plug so you can see what the brother's been up to and what sort of services and things that he offers. But, back to the conversation at hand, we're talking about the profundity of these things, and obviously Enochian, let's get into that, because I've even got a question from the audience, if you'd like to see what the person here says, because Enochian is, like I said in one of my previous podcasts, I went into the local library, and it wasn't the spine, it was on the face, the book cover facing me, and it's in a very, very close to the front door, a dictionary on Enochian Magick. And I'm like going, yes, it is. It was Laycock, yes. And I'm flicking through this thing going, wow, this is pretty involved. But I'll put the question up first, but let's start moving into this Enochian conversation, because I know there's some people here who want to know about it. Okay. So the question is this: have your experiences with Enochian been unique or different to the experience of others, or have there been common similarities, presuming that there are people out there sharing their experiences with this stuff and you've explored that? So I'll just leave it to you, sir.
I think that the experiences are fundamentally the same, but everyone sees them through the lens of their own persona. So the symbolism can differ depending on what culture you come from, but the underlying basic principles remain the same. The one thing that reaches over all of that is that you're dealing with angels, and now they're not exactly as Christian, Islamic, or Hebraic views of angels might be. They're not each of those peoples of the book have a slight, as far as I can tell, have a slightly different understanding of an angel. But each of them have an idea, and the Enochian beings, they are angels. There's no, they're not angels in one culture and nature spirits in another. They're angels, and that really does change the overall timbre of the work you're doing. There are also cacodemons within Enochian, which basically no one bothers with, because the sort of negative entities in Enochian seem to be singularly boring, really, compared to in other traditions. There, they sound a little more interesting, but yeah, Enochian angels. That's the one absolute key point about them, and this is why when John Dee, the Elizabethan mathematician and hermeticist magician, got in touch with them, he knew what he was about. He wanted to speak to God's angels, just as Enoch and Abraham and Adam had also had conversation with these angels, and he knew that the priests in the temple in Jerusalem had used a shoe stone to see God's angels. So he wanted to do that. He specifically wanted to speak with God's angels. Now, however you may see God, and different people in different societies view the ultimate divine, and they might have a pantheistic approach, or they might have a monotheistic approach. However you see that, that's what's involved in Enochian magic. Divine providence, as Bardonists would put it, or God, as a Christian or a Muslim or a follower of Judaism would say. And then there's the angels of divine providence, of divine God. And you are working directly with these angels. And the language that you speak is the language the angels speak to each other. There's no doubt about that. Because when you go to an atheist, sometimes they will speak to each other in Enochian. They're not speaking to you, they're speaking to each other in Enochian. It is clearly the language of the angels, and they are clearly angels. They are not cherubs, they're not always friendly seeming. They will initiate you, and in terms of the ordeal, if you go to a particular atheist, you have to overcome an ordeal to gain an understanding of that particular aspect of God's workshop, or divine providence's workshop. They will be merciless in what they are assigned to do, so that you may undergo that initiation. So they might appear quite nasty to your personal experience at that time. They might appear to be almost tormenting you. Which is more the idea that people would associate, for example, with hell, wouldn't they?
I think that our view, like, sorry, I remember a quote from, I think it was Andre Conscientia. He said something like, I've met plenty of disinterested angels or dismissive or indifferent angels, but I've met some very trustworthy and reliable demons. And there's, I don't personally have a background in spirit magic, so I'm just sharing a quote that I've heard. But essentially, I think that, this brings up two things for me. First of all, something that's big in the world is this light language phenomena, which it's very popular in many spiritual circles. And also the this topic of, like how we perceive angels and demons and how we classify them, and, the things that we project onto their behaviors because we project our own personalities. Well, if it's an angel, he must be a good bloke who's got my best interest in heart and he's playing a harp for me.
I think one angel killed every firstborn in Egypt, didn't they?
So this is a thing. It's like
that wasn't a demon, that was an angel.
Yeah. So, you know, that God's work isn't always understood. And so when we see these examples, it's like, you know, these someone's got to do the work for the big fella. So yeah, sorry. Anyway, I'm just wondering, like, as far as this conversation of the language set, you know, have you got anything to comment on as far as the light language phenomena and Enochian? Is there any
Well,
relationship there as far as you were?
there's no. I'm not familiar with the term light language, but Enochian is, in my opinion, a dialect
Yeah.
of the original language that God spoke to create everything.
Kabbalah?
The technique of Franz Bardon's Key to the True Kabala produces a praxis which, certainly for European languages, you can adapt to your mother tongue. So in other words, your mother tongue is not this cosmic universal language, but there are analogous sounds and concepts within your language, which can then, with Bardon's training in Key to the True Kabbalah, produce a universal praxis, a theurgic praxis, which is the formulae, which and that isn't a language doing it. That's a set of hermetic disciplines and for want of a better phrase, attunements that allow you to, as it were, shoehorn your mother tongue into being a Kabbalistic formula matrix. Enochian, you just speak it and there's an effect. It's inherently powerful. If some unwise person opened a book and read a load of Enochian, they get an effect. This is why, for example, the late and famous Satanist Anton Salvador LaVey put huge tracts of Enochian into his demonic or satanic Bible or whatever it was. I saw that in Wardstones once, and I looked at it, I said, that's Enochian.
Oh, geez, okay.
Pages and pages. So they literally stand there without any magical training, reading out pages and pages of Enochian. Because, of course, fallen angels understand Enochian as well. So that makes perfect sense. So on the one hand, you've got Bardon's incredible Kabbalistic key, which is a universal key that you can develop through graft in his and reach his third book and do that, and you can then adapt your mother tongue to become a formula structure and use the techniques that you've produced for producing Kabbalistic formulae. On the other hand, someone who has never read any book or done any meditative work or stilled their mind or learnt to concentrate or anything can open a book, read out Enochian, and have all sorts of things happen. All my dog's bothering me. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep her calm. So they are both the same thing, but one is a dialect of the original creative language that God spoke and created everything, and the other is a set of hermetic techniques that produce this. There's the other is a set of hermetic techniques which is what Bardon offers us, and it's universal.
Sorry, I have to give the dog a close up.
Zul doesn't like me talking about Enochian. She unlike when my late wife had a bunch of cats and they used to love doing ritual with us. Zul has to go in the kitchen. She doesn't like it.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah. She's a different type of guardian. She deals with the material.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, so both things are true. And Bardon's Key to True Kabbalah is arguably the better expression, because you when you achieve these hermetic objectives and develop your training through initiation into hermetics and practice of magical evocation, you then come to the key to the true Kabbalah. You've got this heritage of hermetic training and capability, and that enables you to get the breakthrough and start actually using the formulae, and that's hermetic. That's hermetic ability, which is tantamount to expressing the primal truth that divine providence employed. But another way of looking at it is that God spoke and created stuff, and in both cases that there's a grain of truth there. I would say far more in Bardon's, because he gives you all the spiritual capabilities that you need to express the formulae and speak creatively as a formula magician. Whereas with Enochian, yes, it is, just by very nature of its structure, a divine language, but you without the theurgy, you can have all sorts of problems. Which is why, for example, there's a few sensational excerpts that people who write about Enochian talk about. For example, when Dee and Kelly made this table of shewbread, as they called it, and they started work on it, an invisible creature bit a hole in Kelly's leg. And Dee actually did a little diagram of the wound, and it's quite a nasty little wound, as if some kind of sharp beak had literally pecked in and pulled out a piece of flesh, and there was a deep, painful wound in the guy's leg, and they had to call on the angels to see a way. So they were playing around with the language, and it automatically activated, and then they had something that wasn't angelic taking advantage of this. Like I say, the fallen angels understand Enochian because they were once angels, and they remember what they used to speak. So they will be able to hear you as well, which is why you must get yourself into a very heightened union with deity, union with divine providence type space, which is of course what Bardon gives you, and which is why, in my view, key to true Kabbalah is the universal key. He gives you that. You develop that capability with it, and it's you can do yourself a mischief with it if you get the training wrong, but you can't really have the kind of problems that simply speaking Enochian aloud can produce, but then I would argue, and this is what I mean, this book that's going to be coming out, Enochian Hermetics, is literally that both of them put together. So you've got that wonderful theurgic formula magic of Bardon's universal key, and then you've got this Enochian. Sorry, the dog again. You've got this Enochian effect that is automatically evocatory. So you've got the top down is the Bardon, and then the bottom up is the Enochian, and it's if I say so myself, it's innovative, because I think I wonder to myself why people, because I have spoken online with people apart from Ray who have achieved the creative word, and I wonder to myself why was I the person to think of finding a way to synthesize the two, and why hasn't this occurred to anyone else? Because Enochian does have a reputation for this automatic effect, and I would have imagined that this would have been, this would immediately be interesting to people. You speak Enochian, stuff happens whether you like it or not. You struggle through Bardon's training. There are rewards on the way, granted, but it's any evolution is always a struggle. So you struggle to evolve. You reach the point where you can express Kabbalistic formulae in the way that Bardon shows us, So why wouldn't you want to apply that to Enochian and see if they can be integrated together? Because one's automatic and the other is sublime theurgy. It really is. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years, in terms of trying to get the formula magic of Bardon to work, because initially I couldn't. It wasn't working, and I really am very grateful to Ray for his help on that. And then once I did that, I immediately looked at how can that incredible formula technique be meaningfully integrated with the Enochian language, and indeed the Enochian magical system to a certain extent as well. And it's very, with a little bit of guidance from the Enochian angels and Ray and some of the planetary angels, I finally managed to iron it out and work out how you can put it together. And the key to it is actually pitch and music. You put them, because Enochian does have different music systems ascribed to it, but they vary. Some people use the diatonic system, but they, to denote mood, they might use the Ionian or the Lydian, depending on what mood they're trying to. And then they use that tonal system with the language, because they're trying to produce a mood feeling. Yes. Right. Well, if you apply the pitch, I knew you'd understand that. If you apply the pitch sequences that Bardon gives for the Kabbalah to the Enochian letters, simply, the letter A becomes the Enochian letter, and you apply the tonal pitches and colors and elements, you simply literally transliterate across. That's fine. But it's when you add the tonal points, when you add the different musical pitches, all of a sudden the two techniques start to work together. All of a sudden, this automatic evocatory effect that is the Enochian language, and this incredibly sublime hermetic technology that is Bardon's formula magic in his third book, they suddenly fit together, and it doesn't feel synthetic or forced anymore.
That's a really great, just that last comment you made. I'm finding that there is a great opportunity in how just even initiation into Hermetics greatly complements, and we talked about this earlier, other systems, and how there is a natural internal desire for a clean as possible kind of like not merging, but a what would you call it? Almost like, it's not symbiotic. It's almost like a divine marriage of sorts, where they find the sweet spot. Like they want. I just find that at this moment in time, a lot of the jigsaw the puzzle pieces around the world are starting to come together a little bit in a very complementary and, wait for it, harmonious way. And there is a natural desire for there's a natural, I kind of think that vital force as well has a natural tendency towards evolutionary sort of like, because you can get dead orgone and dead life force in these things. It's another conversation. That's a Willem Reich conversation. But generally speaking, as a Reiki practicer, if I'm not even thinking about anything else except the vital force, the people in front of me will generally experience some kind of accelerated healing outcome or relief from something, because there's a natural tendency for these practices to head in a certain direction, which is evolution. And I think like if we just use egregores, just that word, like the egregore of the book Initiation Hermetics is like, hey, here's a thing that can help, that points towards evolution, like self-induced, self-propagator. Yes, it's a bit of a mountain to climb, but just watching how it wants to integrate with my Reiki practice, watching how it affects my dreams, the coincidences and the happenstance opportunities that show up at my door when I'm have these two cannons in front of me. I look at the life of Mikao Usui, the life of Franz Bardon. They were alive at the same time in history. And there was the fact that Reiki has a lot of forgotten elements to it. It has its own Kabbalah in a sense called Kotodama, the power of its own words. There's a brand new book that's just been released, and it gives vowels, and those vowels transfer nicely in some cases to key to the True Kabbalah. Here's a great question. In fact, let's throw this one up. Okay, this is a great one. Is Hermetics a glue catalyst for other systems? Please, have you got something you'd like to share?
I think the general consensus, and I found out this. I doubted this and found it to be true. Bardon gives you universal keys. So very briefly, going back to Enochian and coming back into this, Enochian is not a universal key. That sounds paradoxical based on what I've said before, but you can apply a universal key to it to activate it more fully, and it is still the language of the angels despite that. Going back into this question, all of Bardon's works are universal keys, all 3 volumes. You can plug them into anything and get an output. The question therefore is why would you wish to just and a lot of the time you simply stick with Bardon because it's the universal key, it's the best one. Why go off and do something partial when you've got why have a slice of the cake when you've got the whole cake? That's the kind of that's certainly my view. And I when I first read Bardon, I was quite an arrogant young magician. He's saying that he's given us the secrets of the cosmos. How many times have I read that?
Step right up, folks.
How many books have I read that? And it's always guff every time. And sometimes they ask you for money, and that is true. Within the occult and Hermeticism, there's a strong element of caveat emptor in whatever you do with whoever you do it with, and that's just always has been. I mean, you used to be able to buy dust from mummies in Europe as some kind of universal medicine in the Middle Ages. It was very expensive, so it's all part of the thing. But to my immense surprise, Bardon's keys are universal. When all these other books say they give you the secrets to this and the secrets to that, and only the highest initiates know this bit and all can do that bit. But when you actually look at Bardon, yeah, and then you do it, and it's true, which no one's going to believe you because there's lots of other maniacs out there that are part of some cult or something, and they're going to say the same thing, so no one's going to believe that. And of course you could be wrong. You don't think you are, but then neither do various crazed cultists, Moonies or whatever they are. The different people wearing funny clothes and running around chanting or whatever. They think they've got the secrets to the universe. So there's no point in the fact that I think that Bardon's training is the secrets to the universe doesn't help anyone. Because they meet there's so many different people that tell them that everywhere,
that old chestnut. Oh yeah.
The fact that I think it's true, well, so do these other nutters. The only way is to the only thing I can say is, look, give it a try. It's personal, it's private. You don't even need to tell anyone if you feel daft at the end. Give it a try. And if you find out that it's true, then there you go. And if you don't, well, you had a look. Go and look for something else.
That's
the primary advantage of Bardon stuff compared to all these other things is that all you have to do is read his books. So you've got to buy them. That's not earth shattering. Spend a little bit of time going through the early exercises, a few months. If you've been through the mill in meditation or the occult, it won't take you long. You've already done a lot of the basic stuff. And if you find that there are things in there that you haven't encountered in other work, then maybe you're onto something. And you know, but there's no point in saying that to everyone else, because they hear it all the time from everyone. You know, everyone tells them that.
So this is another thing, right? So you can do this Bardon work alongside or do other things alongside this. And this Bardon stuff for me does not color or contaminate the other system as such. If anything, it supports it and offers a depth of understanding where some of the other things, like seriously, I take it, I did a big deep dive years ago on comparative analysis of various Western energetic healing modalities. Okay, for some reason, I tried listening to a whole bunch of people from another country that I don't understand their language, and there was too much metaphor. And for a Western mind like myself, I had to make sense. So I found a bunch of guys who are on the net. They're Western teachers. They're talking about stuff, and once I discovered all these different systems, and they've got all these different techniques and processes and mental gymnastics, like get the healing outcome, whatever. Once I sat down and listened to Mark Rasmus, who introduced me to Franz Bardon, and then looked at it through that lens, I'm like, I can see what all these guys are pointing at. Now, largely, when I look at systems now, I go, a lot of them, they might, tick, say, 6 out of 10 exercises in the Bardon canon.
Yeah.
But it's like they haven't put those ones in, where it's like, I haven't really found anything so far. And I must say, I have sort of stopped my search largely because I'm quite satisfied with the practice. And I'm not,
Yeah. Why bother when you've got what you've got? Yeah. That like I say, the only magical system that has got anything to Bardon is Enochian, because of this automatic effect that it produces.
Yeah.
That's why it's worth pursuing, in my opinion. But as far as I can tell, Bardon's material is premier. That's not to say other stuff isn't also good. But like you say, there'll be elements missing from it that are still to be found in Bardon. And just like you, in the end, I'm like, well, I don't care about all this other stuff. They all seem partial, but this initiation to Hermetics, practice magic evocation, key to true Kabbalah, I'm more than happy just to roll with that.
Man, how many years? How many years have we spent looking for stuff, right?
Yeah.
And and just going, because it just goes on and on. There is so much literature out there. Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to point this out.
No, please.
But this is the thing, right? Because you can be doing LBRPs all day long for but I think what happens is that if there's not some laid out progression, and I'm not saying, because I haven't done a lot of Golden Dawn study, I've done a fair amount of work in the day, but for me it was like, you find out what kind of magus or practicer you are by the practices and how you respond to them. Because, and one of those things is that if you're mowing, and I said this on another podcast the other day, if you go out there and mow the lawn every day, but the lawn doesn't get cut, eventually you're going to be like, well, this is just a waste of time, isn't it? Nothing's happening as a result of my efforts. And don't get me wrong, some things do take time. But if you find that the ritual starts to become hollow because if you're not engaged, if you're not inflamed in process, because it's just dragging out, chances are, like the way things were written back in the day, they may not have had, and I use these terms very loosely because I don't like these labels. In fact, I know that if anything, they're probably part of a business model. ADHD, we need instant gratification. And so maybe these harder processes aren't ideal for everybody, but, finding something that satisfies you and, keeps you moving forward and enthusiastic about it too. This is a marriage, in a sense.
The thing that you're being, this is my perception, the thing you're being nice about is the fact that it's just not there in this other stuff. That you can go so far with it, and then that's it. You go no further. Now, maybe there are secrets in inner orders, but I'm not in those orders, so I don't care.
Yeah.
Especially as Bardon has given me what I see is the real deal. And you know, Bardon says, and this when I repeat this to people, it can cause consternation. Bardon says, and I agree, that he has provided us with a hermetic set of practices and allowing us to unlock certain capabilities that you simply don't find anywhere else. No one else has them. In fact, that's why he wrote them. It's because they were lost. Now, if you say that to people who are really into an occult organization, that's directly threatening,
Mm.
and you know, will be perceived as hostile because you're basically telling them that's pants. Bardon's good. Bye. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying. You know, and it's not very nice. So most Bardon practitioners tend not to say it because we're not really interested in upsetting people. We're more interested in proceeding with Bardon's work. And
Yeah.
like I say, from to the outsider, you have to understand their consternation because they've met so many nutty cults who say the same thing.
Yeah.
How can they, unless they actually give it a try themselves, how can they know you're not just another bunch of deluded cultist maniacs? I mean, they're not going to be able to discriminate between you and some other bunch of people. I'm not going to start naming groups because that in itself is pejorative, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the only way that they can find out, assuming they wish to, is to actually, you know, in deadly secrecy, go and do some Bardon and not tell anyone about it and find out for themselves. And
The other system.
you know, see, it's a sort of subversive Bardoning, and then what can happen is all of a sudden they emerge, you know, having had a few achievements with Bardon's training, and it's the best thing since sliced bread, and they'll you know, that's I think I wrote a piece in Perseus about this phenomenon and how it can cause great consternation. And it's not deliberate. And, you know, when people say, no, Bardon is not good or whatever, well, that's up to them. You
Yeah.
know, I'm happy. But that's the other thing. It's not a religion in a sort of proselytization way. It's a sacred science that you choose to pursue, and other people choose to pursue other things in other walks of life. But there's no doubt about it. Speaking as a Bardon practitioner, it is you may achieve the work of many lifetimes through doing this work.
Yeah.
Literally, you know, that is literally and actually true. You will do things and experience things that people can't even think of what happens.
Mhm.
And again, Bardon will if they read Bardon's books, that this will also be potentially annoying to them, because Bardon will literally say multiple times, only someone who's done this level of hermetics can understand this, and there's no point in me even writing about it. They know what I'm saying now, and
Mm.
anyone else can just not understand, and then he moves on to his
Yeah.
next thing, you know, and that's actually true. But of course, to a younger me, this notion was actually quite offensive. You know, it was when I first read it, I thought, well, this is, yeah, you know, this is dreadful. I should, and there's all sorts of egoistic defences.
Mm.
And it was only when I was actually seeing an Enochian angel in a shoe stone in Giza City on the Giza Plateau, and I, you know, do Bardon, okay. That's okay. You know, if an angel suggests, they don't command. They suggest it, you should do something like Bardon. They don't say do. It's like something like Bardon. Do that. Okay. You know, and then to go back into the Bardon stuff and find that all my issues and ridiculous um, mental strategies to nonsense his work was literally that. nonsense, and that what Bardon writes is pretty much exactly what it is. I mean, you see, the problem is that most of the time you read something that says that, and you know it's guff. And then when you actually, so it's very difficult when you get the real deal to accept that it is the real deal, you know.
Yeah. Oh, it's another real deal, you know. And I think this is where it's at. I've said this before. I've got a book in one of my bookcases here, and it's like the the discerning scholar's approach to like magicians, or it's like a book on wizards, basically. That's what it is. It's a book about wizards, and it's a fun kind of book, and it's about yay thick. No mention of Bardon. Now, some people might be watching this live stream and going, man, you guys are like fanboy shillers for Franz Bardon. And I'm like going, here's a thing, right? So we're not like, oh my gosh, you know, like I've got the Bardon t-shirt and I've got the no, you don't understand, okay? Because it can sound like that. Like, you know, he's our guy. Don't you say anything bad about Franz. He's our man. It's like, hang on, you don't understand.
Only Franz, as you put it the other day.
Yeah, and only Franz. Yeah. The cult of Bardon. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure that exists in pockets. What we're trying to say is that there's the teacher and the teachings. And one thing that comes up is obviously like, you know, he was a bit overweight and he was a smoker and liked his coffee and these types of things too. And maybe some of his lifestyle that we're aware of didn't quite match up with what he was instructing. And this is a thing. I had it come up on a YouTube comment the other day. Now, regardless, he gives a set of processes. The Reiki guy, he died of a stroke, okay? And he was an overweight, portly chap and these types of things. But it's okay. We'd like them to be ideal. I'd like to go to my doctor, and my doctor's a completely fit, healthy dude. But sometimes you go and see an overweight, unhealthy doctor. Up to you. But anyway, are the practices solid? The initiation into Hermetic practices that just happened to be written by a chap called Franz Bardon, who has a very interesting backstory. I think Frabato as well adds to a lot of the enthusiasm and the astral mystique and the motivator. Like having a novel preceding a practice, I think that's quite a clever thing. I mean, he was a stage magician too, but like I said, he gives a set of universal practices. And you mentioned this, you know, like you can get rid of all the who did it and who said and all that. And it's like these things lead to certain outcomes that can only really truly be appreciated if you do them. And you don't know. You can intellectualize it all you want, but your intellectual understanding can only take you so far. The experiential understandings that come through, whole different story.
Yep, and that's when the fanatical gleam appears in the eye, which can be readily mistaken by other people, you know. But the question that kicked all this off, Bardon provides 3 universal keys. Yep. Bardon writes that they were lost to humanity, and he is, in accordance with the will of divine providence, returned them to us in these 3 books. And the thing that's distinctive about them is that, unlike in the past, they're formatted for solo work. Whereas, as far as we can tell, in the past, you had to be initiated in a mystery school to have access to these hermetic keys that he provides. And in the modern day, you can be very naughty indeed and just get a PDF and then print it out and give it a go. And if you get it working, you literally have the keys to the universe in hermetic sense in your hands. And more so than anything else that I personally have encountered, I would say. Except Enochian.
Yes. Well, speaking of which, we're coming up towards the end of the 90 minutes section here, and so it would be a great time just to quickly check the chat. And thank you. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Tao Diletto, thank you so much for joining us here. We appreciate your eyes on, and the live stream broadcast will be available immediately once we've finished the live stream, so you can go back and watch through it. And but yeah, let's do some plugging for some of your wares, good sir. And so I'm just going to change the screen here a little bit. Oh, here we go. So now you've got a course on Perseus Arcane Academy.
Yeah.
And this is it here, the Enochian Ethers course on Perseus Arcane Academy. I'm just going to switch over. So just tell me if my screen does funny things. But basically, on Perseus, you're offering a course. Now, this course here is, well, you'd be the best person to talk about it. So tell us.
It's basically me giving you input on the kind of tasks required to be initiated into an Enochian Aether, and how I will be giving people guidance on making sure they've completed an Aether before they move on to the next one. What kind of work will enable you to prepare for the next Aether? And that relates specifically to Bardon's training. In other words, Bardon's training is premier, and these Aethers are derivative of that training. So different steps in Bardon's initiation into Hermetics will allow you more readily to work with specific Aethers. So Bardon's training is the primary work, and the Aethers are additional beneficial work. One of the things that the Aethers do, and this isn't just my view, it's the view of many people that have entered them, is they to use an Eastern term, they help to process karma within the Aether, so that will enable you to progress more readily in other spiritual work. But that does mean that the Aethers can be an ordeal. Sometimes you undergo an ordeal in the Aether, and that helps to process some of your deeds in past lives, to an extent at least. And that will, and I'm going to use a Bardon framework here. Bardon clearly writes, and I agree, that a person could be working really hard at their Hermetic training, but karma from previous lifetimes can impact that. So the Enochian Aethers is a way to help. It will not entirely remove all of your karma, but it will help you to, if you know, it'll remove some of the ballast and allow you to perhaps progress forward with Bardon's training a little more effectively, because some of that has been processed via ordeal with the angels in a particular Aether. So that's the purpose of the course. It's a slightly different purpose to the more classical approach to the Aethers. But that doesn't mean that the more classical approach of gaining union with the divine is not also a necessary part of the work. It certainly is. So that's I could probably speak for ages about it, but that's kind of a summation, really.
Okay, perfect, wonderful. Thank you for that. And we also have I just want to put this up as well, is that you also have a presence on Falcon Books Publishing.
Yeah, that's a book that's due to be published called Enochian Hermetics, which I was talking about earlier, where it's not just Bardon's third key and the Enochian language. I also point out where certain techniques that are found in Bardon's initiation into Hermetics and the practice of magical evocation can be used with Enochian magic in general, as well as the language, and that this is very useful, because the application of Bardon's universal keys to Enochian magic really does produce some remarkable improvements in your work. I mean, but what I say, I think at one point, is that Bardon's technique can be applied to many ritual systems with good effect, but because Enochian has this automatic evocatory nature, it is worth extra interest, and it's perhaps a reason why you would, whilst working on Bardon's universal keys, also have an interest in a satellite system, if you like, which is although the Enochian system is, well, it isn't really a satellite system, but it's outside of the Bardon corpus, is perhaps what I mean by saying that. So essentially, Enochian Hermetics is literally that. It's Bardon's Hermetics, how it works with Enochian. Because Enochian is automatic in its effect, it's worth trying, and people will find literally by integrating the two that they get considerable output, to use the phrase "bang for your buck." Just considerable.
Wonderful. What a great conversation. Thank you so much. you know, we've covered so much ground here, and, you know, you've got plenty of works where people can go and check them out. You've got a blog on Perseus too, as well, that I have shared in the description below on YouTube. I just want to say,
sorry, there's one other thing. I'm going to be, I talked about it on the Bardon last week. I'm going to be offering some lab alchemy material, but that will be free.
Ooh.
That'll be free. Work with metal oils is the first thing I'm going to be offering, but it has to be free for alchemical reasons.
Okay.
But you know, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to have to buy equipment for it and stuff.
Yeah,
because they will. Otherwise, they will. You know, you have to buy lab equipment and stuff to do it properly. But that is quite imminent as well.
Wonderful. Wow, that's very generous of you. Thank you so much. Well, I have to say, I just want to do a quick shout out and say thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for showing up, hanging out, and taking advantage of Philip's wide and width and depth of knowledge on these various topics. We've talked about Hermetics, key to the True Kabala, the Franz Bardon material. We've talked about Enochian. We've talked about so many different things. So please go back, rewatch, take notes, clip the videos. I've left that open. If anyone spots any gems that can be shared, please do so. The more we can propagate this information, create interest in it, the greater we can support the teachers, and so they can do more of this and create more stuff, so they don't have to go and do other things to put a bowl of rice on the table, things of this nature. So I just want to say thank you so much to my wonderful guest, Mr. Philip Harris-Smith.
Thank you. It's been a blast, mate. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, actually.
Oh, it's a good hangout, you know, and there are some things that we have divergent views on, but that doesn't taint the quality of the tone of the conversation.
I'd say it adds to the enjoyment, actually.
Yes, it does. And I think too, because if you look at what Mr. Bardon says, if we're taking a note from his book, it's like going, you know, harmony can exist within disturbance to an extent too. You're walking onto the battlefield. You just choose whether or not you let it sort of like push you around. And, you know, that's your internal state that will decide that. And that's why we do this internal work, to basically go, how am I going to respond? And what's the most parsimonious, I love that word, way to, you know, to respond? Because I think in a sense, we're here to propagate harmony if we really want to take these things to the extreme. In some senses, like we'd like everyone to be doing well. And oh my gosh, thank you. What a wonderful crowd. Thank you so much, Mr. Philip Harris-Smith. Would you like to have the final words, drop a nice piece of wisdom for the crowd?
Well, I still, despite Mr. Crowley being an absolutely dreadful fellow, I would still say, do what thou will shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Yeah.
There's a lot. That is beautiful.
I can add no more than that. And thank you again for your time.
Most welcome. I'll get you to stick around for just 1 minute once I end the broadcast. Thank you to everyone in the chat and the stream and everything like that. Please remember to like, subscribe, and do all those things. And look in the YouTube description below for more details about how you can support Philip. Find Philip, support this channel and other creatives that we bring on here. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you guys in about an hour and a half for Peter de Chemin. And yeah. So it's a busy morning here, but we'll see you all again very soon. Stay well.